Have you ever felt like you're living under a microscope? Like every little thing you do is being watched and judged?
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling.
Or maybe it's like there's this invisible pressure, this sense that something good in your life could be snatched away at any moment.
Or like everything has to be perfect all the time, everything in its place.
Exactly. And if any of that rings true for you, well, you're definitely in the right place for this deep dive.
Because we're going to unpack some really fascinating and insightful stuff today, stuff that might help you make sense of some of those feelings.
Today, we're diving deep into the world of controlling parents. And our main guide for this exploration is Dan Newhart's book, If You Had Controlling Parents.
This book is a real treasure trove of insights, and it's actually helped so many people understand and start to heal from the long-term impacts of growing up with parents who were, well, maybe a little too controlling.
It's not about blaming our parents, though, right?
No, absolutely not.
It's more about understanding.
Yeah, it's about shining a light on those patterns from the past and seeing how they might still be influencing our lives today.
So, in this deep dive, we're going to explore a few of the key styles of controlling parenting that Newhart lays out in the book.
He actually identifies 8 different styles, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it really gives us a comprehensive framework to understand this complex dynamic.
But for today, we'll focus on a few of the most common ones to give you, our listener, some real tangible takeaways.
You might recognize some of these patterns in your own life, in the lives of people you know, or even in just broader cultural dynamics.
Let's kick things off with the first style Newhart dives into, which is smothering parenting. Life under a microscope.
Ooh, that title is so evocative. It really captures the essence of this style, doesn't it?
It really does. So at the heart of smothering parenting is this intense fear that the parent has of being alone.
Right, and this fear can lead them to basically emotionally engulf their children, creating an environment that feels incredibly overbearing.
Yeah, it's like the parent is constantly hovering, always there, always watching, never giving the child any space to breathe.
And that can be so stifling. The book uses those exact words, overbearing and stifling.
Yeah.
It's like the child is living in a bubble where they're not allowed to have their own thoughts or feelings.
And the book shares some truly compelling examples of this. One that really stuck with me was Colleen's story. She was the oldest of 7 children.
Wow, 7 kids. That's a lot of potential for smothering.
And her experience really illustrates this dynamic perfectly. She talks about this tyranny of sameness that existed at their family dinners. Her father would actually dictate when each child could speak about their day.
So it was like a super structured, controlled environment, no room for spontaneity or individual expression.
Right. And if one child didn't want to talk, nobody could. It was this enforced unity, this idea that everyone had to be on the same page all the time.
And that sends such a powerful message to the child, doesn't it? So like their individual needs and feelings don't matter. What matters is maintaining this facade of family harmony, even if it's completely artificial.
Absolutely. And the control went beyond just conversations. Colleen also shares this really disturbing detail about how her father would behave in the car. If any of the children misbehaved, he would just lash out and hit whoever was closest.
Oh, wow. That's awful.
I know. And it didn't matter who actually caused the problem. It was just about punishing someone, anyone, to reassert control. And if the child who was hit, even if they were innocent, protested, his response was always, "Who cares? You all need to behave."
It's just heartbreaking. It shows such a blatant disregard for individual accountability and for each child's unique experience.
And you can really see how those early experiences shaped Colleen's life. As an adult, she struggled to identify and express her own emotions. She had a really hard time with authority figures.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
If you grow up in an environment where you're constantly being told what to do, what to think, what to feel, it's going to impact your ability to trust your own inner voice.
Exactly. And she also found it incredibly difficult to navigate intimate relationships.
Because intimacy requires vulnerability, right? It requires letting someone else see you for who you truly are. And if you've never been given the space to develop a strong sense of self, that can feel incredibly threatening.
And the book goes on to explore this idea of uniform values within smothering families. And Kui's story is a really powerful example of this. She grew up as the child of Chinese immigrants.
Okay, and so was there a lot of pressure on her to succeed academically? I've heard that can be a common expectation in some immigrant families.
Oh, absolutely. There was immense pressure on her to excel in school, to the point where it felt like her entire worth as a person was tied to her grades.
Which is a lot for a child to carry. I mean, we all want our kids to do well, but when it becomes the sole measure of their value, that's when it becomes problematic.
Exactly, and Kui shared that she would actually be paraded in front of her mother's friends, having to display her academic awards and achievements.
Oh gosh, that must have been so uncomfortable for her.
It was. She felt like she was living her life to please others, to fulfill her parents' aspirations for her, rather than pursuing her own passions.
And that's a common theme we see with smothering parents. There's this blurring of boundaries, this sense that the child's life is an extension of the parent's own ego and unfulfilled dreams.
Right, and it can lead to a lifelong pattern of seeking external validation and approval. The book is filled with such powerful examples.
Like Sally's story. Her father had this unwavering rule that she had to eat absolutely everything that was served to her. And I mean everything. He'd even give her the previous night's leftovers, cold, for breakfast if she didn't finish them.
Oh, wow. That's rigid.
It is, and it speaks to this real need for control that smothering parents often have. It's like their own anxiety gets projected onto the child's behavior, and they try to manage that anxiety through these strict rules and expectations.
And in Sally's case, it went beyond just food. Her father also completely rejected her when she came out as a lesbian. For him, her disagreeing with him, choosing a different path, was like a personal betrayal.
That's so sad. It highlights how any deviation from the parents' expectations, from their worldview, can be perceived as a threat to their sense of self. It's like the child's individuality is seen as a rejection of the parent.
And then there was Tina. Her mother was obsessed with controlling her appearance, picking out all her clothes.
Oh, I've heard about that. Some parents just can't let go of that control over how their kids look.
And in Tina's case, it was extreme. Her mother also insisted on a complete lack of privacy. Doors were never allowed to be closed, not even when showering or sleeping.
That's a whole other level of control. It's like the parent doesn't trust the child to be alone with their own thoughts and feelings.
And that constant exposure, that lack of boundaries, had a profound impact on Tina. As an adult, she felt really emotionally stifled, and she lacked confidence in her own judgment.
It makes sense, right? If you've never been given the space to develop your own sense of self, to explore who you are, it's going to be really hard to feel secure in your own skin.
And the key takeaway here, as Newharth points out, is that for smothering parents, any move towards independence, any expression of a different opinion is often experienced as a personal rejection.
Like their whole world is falling apart if their child dares to disagree with them.
Okay, so let's shift gears now and talk about the second style of controlling parenting. Depriving parenting. Playing takeaway.
Ooh, that title sounds even more intense.
It is, and it perfectly captures the emotional dynamic at play. So, with depriving parenting, the parents tend to withhold attention, encouragement, and emotional support.
Wow, so love becomes this conditional thing, something the child has to earn.
Exactly. It's like a constant game of emotional manipulation. The child is always striving for approval, but it always feels just out of reach.
That can be so damaging to a child's self-esteem.
It absolutely is. And the book is full of heartbreaking examples. Samantha's story is a really vivid illustration. She remembers her mother's approval being incredibly inconsistent. Sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't.
It's like walking on eggshells, never knowing what to expect.
Exactly. And there was always this underlying threat of being cut off, of being disowned, if she didn't adhere to her parents' very specific desires for her life.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure to put on a child.
It was. And it wasn't just an empty threat. Her brother actually experienced this firsthand. He started dating someone her parents didn't approve of, and they basically disowned him.
Oh my gosh, that's awful.
It was. But then they welcomed him back with open arms once the relationship ended. It just shows how conditional their love was.
It's like they were saying, we'll only love you if you do exactly what we want.
And in this kind of environment, the child's own dreams and aspirations are often actively discounted or dismissed. Take David, for example. He had a real passion for photography.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It was. But his parents saw it as impractical, not a real career, and they refused to even buy him film. So for months, he just carried his camera around, pretending.
Oh, that breaks my heart. It's like they were crushing his spirit, his creativity.
They were. And he also really craved recognition for his good grades, but his parents, who, as Newharth notes, displayed both depriving and perfectionistic tendencies, rarely even acknowledged his achievements.
So it's like a double whammy of emotional control.
It was, and during family car rides, they would just talk about him as if he wasn't even there.
Oh, wow. That's just plain cruel. It's like they were erasing his presence, making him feel invisible.
Exactly. And even those weekly 2-hour silent car rides with his father to Hebrew classes for his bar mitzvah highlight this lack of emotional connection. It wasn't that his father wasn't there physically, it was that he wasn't emotionally present.
So David had this presence, but no real connection.
And it's so touching that one of David's few real joys as an adult is taking photographs. It's like he's reclaiming that lost part of himself, that passion that was stifled in his childhood.
And then there's Sherry's story, which illustrates what Newhart calls ignored gifts.
Mm.
She achieved an incredible score, placing in the 98th percentile on national scholastic tests.
Wow, that's a huge accomplishment.
It is, but her mother didn't even bother to attend the awards ceremony.
Her mother's attitude was that doing well was simply expected. There was no praise, no celebration of Sherry's hard work and talent.
It's like they were saying, that's just what you're supposed to do, nothing special.
But if Sherry didn't, say, mop the floor to her mother's exacting standards, she'd face punishment. And there's this really disturbing story about her mother trying to physically force her to write with her right hand, even taping her mouth shut when she asked why.
Oh, that's just awful. And it's like the parent is trying to mold the child into some preconceived ideal, completely disregarding their individuality.
And it's important to note that Newhart also explores this idea of an emptiness that can stem from parents who grew up during times of real scarcity, like the Depression.
Right, so they carry that scarcity mentality into their parenting, even when it's no longer necessary.
Exactly. Roberta's story is a really powerful example of this. Her family was actually quite financially secure, but there was this incredibly rigid control around food.
Like what kind of control?
Like strict meal schedules, the same meals on the same days of the week, no exceptions, no snacking allowed, and she wasn't even allowed to look inside the refrigerator.
Wow, that's extreme.
It was. And Roberta would actually read upsetting material just to lose her appetite so she could secretly hoard her lunch money.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. It shows how deeply ingrained that scarcity mentality can be.
And as an adult, Roberta struggled with alcoholism, eating disorders, and even continued to hoard food.
It's like those early experiences of deprivation really left their mark.
And Newhart points out that parents deprive for various reasons. It could be their own limited emotional capacity, maybe some underlying emotional disturbance, a discomfort with intimacy, or even this belief that they're somehow toughening up their children.
It's like they're trying to prepare their children for a harsh world by creating a harsh environment at home.
Right, but it can backfire spectacularly.
It often does.
All right, let's move on to the third style. Perfectionistic parenting. A place for everything, and everything had better be in place.
This one sounds like it could be really challenging for both the parent and the child.
It absolutely can be. So the defining characteristic of perfectionistic parenting is this intense fear of flaws and mistakes. And this fear drives these parents to push their children relentlessly to be the best, to achieve at the highest level in everything they do.
So it's like the parent is living vicariously through the child, trying to achieve their own unfulfilled dreams.
That's often a part of it. And it creates this incredibly pressured environment for the child.
Where there's no room for failure, no room for mistakes.
Right. Exactly. And the consequences can be really significant. The book talks about emotional suppression, the sense of worth being tied solely to achievements, compulsivity, self-doubt, and even depression.
Wow, that's a heavy load for a child to bear.
It is. And Will's story is a really powerful illustration. His father put immense pressure on him to excel in swimming from a very young age.
So it was like his whole life revolved around swimming.
It pretty much did. And when he initially failed to make the varsity team as a teenager, even though he was 2 years younger than most of the kids trying out, his father gave him a 2-hour lecture.
Oh my gosh, a 2-hour lecture, that's intense.
It was. And even when Will eventually made varsity and went on to become a champion swimmer, his father still found fault. He berated him for narrowly missing qualifying for nationals.
So even when he succeeded, it wasn't enough.
Never enough. And Will's father truly believed that life is a performance, which is a real hallmark of perfectionistic parents. They see everything as a competition, a test.
And that can be so exhausting for the child. It's like they're never allowed to just be themselves, to enjoy the process, to make mistakes and learn from them.
And Will, as a teenager, felt completely numb. He was so disconnected from his own feelings that he described looking in the mirror and feeling like his own reflection held his soul captive.
That's such a powerful image. It speaks to the profound sense of alienation that perfectionistic parenting can create.
And as an adult, Will struggled with authority figures and also in his intimate relationships.
Again, it makes sense. If you've grown up in an environment where you're constantly being judged and criticized, it's going to be hard to trust others, to let them see you for who you truly are.
Then there's Elizabeth's story. Her mother demanded absolute perfection, even in the smallest social interactions. She had to curtsy for guests, be drilled on how to answer the phone properly, and even had to correctly identify every ingredient in a dish after one
Oh
taste.
my goodness, that sounds so stressful.
It was. And it speaks to this micromanagement, this need to control every aspect of the child's life.
And it's often about creating this outward image of a perfect family.
Exactly. And perfectionistic parents often have a really hard time distinguishing between their own unfulfilled dreams and their children's lives.
So it becomes less about the child's well-being and more about the parent's own ego.
And the book talks about this idea of status worship, where things like beauty, social standing, power, or money become almost like religious
It's
obsessions.
like they're trying to fill some internal void with external validation.
And that can create a really warped sense of values for the child. They start to believe that their worth is tied to these external markers of success rather than to their inner qualities.
So it becomes a never-ending chase for something that will never truly satisfy.
And now, remember, we've only just touched on a few of the styles of controlling parenting that Dan Newhart explores in his book. He also discusses other patterns like cult-like parenting, chaotic parenting, using parenting, abusing parenting, and childlike parenting.
And it's really important to remember that these are just frameworks for understanding. In reality, parents often display elements of multiple styles.
Exactly. And the point isn't to label or diagnose anyone. It's to gain a deeper understanding of these complex dynamics so we can start to heal and break free from any unhealthy patterns.
And if any of what we've discussed today has stirred something within you, maybe some recognition, maybe some sadness, or even anger, know that those feelings are totally valid.
The book actually acknowledges and validates those feelings. It even has a section called, "What if exploring this makes me feel anger, pain, fear, or grief?"
New Hearth encourages us to embrace those feelings, to see them as part of the healing process.
So as you reflect on what we've talked about today, I want to leave you with a really powerful question from the book. Considering these different styles of controlling parenting, what pieces of the puzzle of your own personality might have been assembled for you or even forced together by your early experiences?
That's a question worth really sitting with. And as you explore that, also consider which of those adult feelings or experiences that New Hearth lists, things like being perfectionistic driven, rarely satisfied, or feeling like it has taken a long time to emotionally separate from your parents, might resonate with your own life.
See this as a starting point for deeper self-reflection. And if you're feeling called to dive deeper, the book offers so many resources and pathways for healing and setting healthy boundaries.
Remember, understanding these dynamics can be incredibly empowering. It can help you break free from those unhealthy patterns and create a life that is truly your own.
And the journey of healing is possible. As Dan Newhart reminds us, you're not alone, you can make sense of your childhood, and you have the power to heal yourself.
It's a message of hope, a reminder that no matter what we've experienced, we can always choose to create a different future.
And that's a really beautiful thing.
It really is.